Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Minisforum BD770i. Now Minisforum is definitely known for making mini PCs, but recently they've gotten to the mini ITX all-in-one motherboard market, and these are actually really awesome. Last month we took a look at their first edition, which was the AD650i. It was powered by an Intel CPU with integrated graphics. But today, we've got the AMD counterpart, and this thing is going to come in really handy for building small form factor PCs, or even just a full-fledged gaming PC, because this thing's actually packing a really powerful CPU. Now again, this is known as the Minisforum BD770i, and we've got an AMD Ryzen 7 7745HX running it up to 100 watts in this motherboard. 8 cores, 16 threads. It is based on Zen 4, so we can definitely expect some really good CPU performance when it comes to single and multi-core. Pre-installed cooler. You can add your own 120mm fan. It also has a pretty beefy M.2 SSD cooler. And we've got a full-size PCIe 5.0 X16 slot, so we can add a graphics card to this motherboard. It's not just going to be relying on integrated graphics. In this video, I've got a lot to show you. We're actually going to be putting together a really powerful gaming PC with this motherboard. But before we get into it, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by Ridge. Now, you're probably familiar with the Ridge wallets, and recently I actually made the switch from an old trifold wallet that I'd replace every 3 years to the Ridge wallet. And personally, I couldn't be any happier. Now, over on their website, they do offer over 30 different color variants. Their brand new Hyper Lime is the one that I'm actually using right now, along with their Hyper Lime key case. And, you know, they're definitely known for making the wallets, but they also offer these really awesome key cases here. So if you're also looking to keep your keys organized, this is a really great option. It actually holds up to 6 keys. And right now, with their Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals they have going on, if you head over to ridge.com/ETAPRIME, you can get up to 30% off. And another perk here is if you use my link, you can enter your email or your phone number for a free chance to win a Ridge bundle worth $4,000. No purchase necessary. And really, if you want to avoid giving bad gifts this holiday season, Ridge is definitely perfect for your loved ones. Remember, you can get 30% off by heading over to ridge.com/ETAPRIME. So with this, we can build a full-fledged gaming PC, and it's actually going to be putting down some really good performance. And when it comes to I/O, around back here, we've got a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, 2 USB 2.0 Type A ports, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, full-size HDMI, full-size DisplayPort, and USB Type-C, which supports alt display mode, so 3 displays out of the motherboard. But remember, we can always install a GPU and get even more there. Now, inside of the box, along with the motherboard, we have our rear I/O plate. We've also got a 120mm fan bracket, so it can go right on top of that pre-installed CPU cooler. Lots of hardware for getting our M.2 SSDs installed, and a wireless antenna system. When it comes to the overall specs here, for the CPU, we've got that AMD Ryzen 7 7745HX. It is based on Zen 4, 8 cores, 16 threads, base clock of 3.6 GHz with a boost up to 5.1. It also has a built-in Radeon 610i GPU at 2200 MHz based on RDNA 2, but we're not going to be utilizing that in this build. Dual channel SODIMM DDR5 up to 5200 megatransfers per second. 2 M.2 2280 PCIe 5.0 SSD slots. It also has one M.2 2230 key E slot for a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi module. This did come pre-installed with Wi-Fi 6. And of course, we've got that PCIe 5.0 X16 slot, so we can add a really nice GPU to this little build. And in order to put everything together, I will need some extras here. When it comes to storage, I'm going with the 2TB M.2 SSD from Aorus. 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM from Crucial, and to tell you the truth, until I get this inside of the case, I haven't decided what fan I'm going to go with. It does support a 120mm fan with the bracket, but I could do some modification, use an 80 if I wanted to. I'll figure it out by the end. I've got a lot of choices. And of course, going small form factor would kind of be the way to go, but you know, when it comes to low profile GPUs, we've got really one good option right now. That's the GTX 4060. And I wanted to pair this board up with a much larger, more powerful AMD GPU, so the build here will be larger. And for the power supply, I'm going with the Cooler Master GX 3850 Gold. Definitely overkill for this build, but that's the one I have on hand right now. And for the GPU, we're going with the ASRock Phantom Gaming AMD Radeon RX 7800 XT with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. I love the 7800 XT and I wanted to see what we could do with a build like this. If you're interested in seeing a really small form factor build, let me know in the comments below and we can definitely put something together in the next one. And finally, we're going to need a case for all of this to go into, and this is one I've actually been wanting to build in for a little while now. This is Cooler Master's new QUBE 500. It's a flat pack case with tons of different options, and personally, I do think it looks really good. They do send along a few different colored panels. I'm going to go with the green here. I think they call it Mochi. And overall, putting this case together has been really fun. It's like Legos, and like I mentioned, several different configuration options. We can set the power supply up in the top and the bottom. This whole case can sit vertically or horizontally, and I think it's going to fit in perfectly with this build. Alright, so first thing I need to do here is install the SSD that I'm going to be using. And these SSDs do come with their own cooler pre-installed, but I will need to remove it because this does have a pretty big cooler on it. It's definitely more than enough for two M.2s, even PCIe 5.0 M.2s, which do generate a lot of heat. 2 terabytes is going to be more than enough for this little setup here. Next, we'll go ahead and install the RAM. 32 gigabytes running in dual channel, and this does utilize SODIMM, as you can see. Now we'll just go ahead and set the whole unit inside of the case. And again, I will decide on the fan once I get everything put together. Not sure what I really want to go with here. Now it's time to add the GPU, and I did have to rearrange that power supply. Initially, I kind of wanted it up front, but since ASRock adds these really massive coolers to their GPUs, it just wouldn't fit. So I had to put it in the lower area. But with the power supply now kind of out of the way, shouldn't have a problem putting this in here. And once it's finished, it looks a little something like this, and I do think it looks pretty good. Now for the fan, I actually went with a Cooler Master 120mm RGB. I'm not into RGB too much, but I did have 3 of these. So I've got one on the CPU, I've got one in the upper level to kind of pull air out, and I've got one up front to kind of push air into the case. I think this is going to be more than enough for this little setup here. Okay, so first things first, I wanted to give you a look at the BIOS, and they are using the new Minisforum visual BIOS, really easy to navigate. From Advanced, we're going to go to AMD CBS, SMU Common Options, System Configuration. Now, out of the box, this was set to Auto. We've got a 45, 55, and a 75. I've actually done some testing at Auto, and this does boost up to 100 watts. But from here, we can actually adjust the Smart Shift control if you wanted to. Now, lots of other settings in here, obviously. CPU Common Options, Core Performance Boost is set to Auto here. I mean, it looks like we've got a lot to mess around with, but for this video, we're going to leave this stock just to see what we can get out of it. Okay, so I've been up and running with this system for a little while now. Everything's been working really well. As you can see, we have that AMD Ryzen 7 7745HX. Got 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM here. And of course, we've got that RX 7800 XT. 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. Personally, one of my favorites right now. But the first thing I wanted to show you here was what kind of TDP this is running at. Now we took a look at the BIOS and we can adjust it. We're set to auto right now, and to do this, what I'm going to use is CPU-Z. We're just going to stress it out, and right down here in core temp, you can see this jumps up to 100 watts. So we had a little bit of a boost over 107. Temp's really not that bad. I mean, we're putting an extreme load on it right now, and we've got some really nice clocks on all of these cores here. Next thing I wanted to take a look at were some CPU benchmarks. And first up, we've got Cinebench R23 multi-core 17,492. And this is definitely more of an extreme test. Basically, it stresses out all 8 cores, 16 threads at 100% for 10 minutes with this test. We hit a max temperature on that CPU of only 88 degrees Celsius. Now we're well under thermal throttle, not hurting anything at all, and it's actually not that loud. I've got that 120mm fan in here. Next up, we've got Geekbench 6, single core 2,307, multi 13,270. I mean, yeah, with those Zen 4 cores, looking really good here. So let's move over to some GPU benchmarks, and this is really going to be more dependent on that 7800 XT that we have installed. 3D Mark Firestrike, 38,435. And the last one I ran here was Time Spy with a very impressive 18,085. So just looking at these synthetic benchmarks, yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty powerful system here, and now it's time to test out some real-world gaming. Here we have Forza Motorsports, 1440p, ultra settings, looking pretty good, and if you take a look at Afterburner up in the top left-hand corner, you can see that our CPU power is getting close to around 60 watts, not using too much. After all, we can go up to 100 here. Looking really nice at 1440p, and at 4K, you will need a lot of FSR when you're utilizing something like that RX 7800 XT, or take those settings way down. But with it set up like this, we got an average of 88 FPS, which is really good in my opinion. This setup handled Spider-Man Remastered like a champ, 1440p, very high, no FSR, so we didn't need any kind of resolution scale here. We got an average of 124 FPS, and you'll see it fluctuate between, 117 up to around 160, depending on where you are in the city. But overall, really playable. I also wanted to test Forza Horizon 5, 1440p, extreme settings. We got an average of 152 FPS, and really I just kind of threw this in to kind of get a feel for the difference between Forza Motorsports and Forza Horizon 5. Really hope they get on track, get some more optimizations over there for the new Forza, because when it comes to Horizon 5, this game runs amazingly on most every system I've ever played it on. The next game I wanted to test was Cyberpunk 2077, and as you can see here, we're getting some great performance out of this machine. 1440p Ultra, we don't have ray tracing on. I'm not a huge fan of ray tracing in the first place, but I've tested it quite a lot on these AMD cards. Really kind of falls on its face. Now, it's totally possible to use ray tracing here, but if we went to ray tracing Ultra right now, we'd also have to take FSR to performance in order to get a really steady 60 out of it. And finally, we've got Starfield 1440p high. Now we're in a city, we're in Jemison right now, and I always like to test in these cities just to see if we can go over 60 with it, because if you tried this when it first released, it probably kind of ran like crap on your PC. But now with driver optimizations from Nvidia and AMD, we're seeing some decent performance, but we are over 60 FPS in cities with a setup like this. Okay, so first impressions here for the Minisforum BD770i. I really do like the fact that they've done this. They've paired a really powerful mobile Zen 4 APU or CPU here. We're not really utilizing, the iGPU with a nice mini ITX motherboard. Retail on this over on their website is $399 at the time of making this video. And yeah, you could actually get out cheaper going this route if you want to build a Zen 4 mini ITX system. This also comes with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Obviously, we've got that cooler, motherboard, and CPU ready to go. But if you don't mind spending a little more, you could go with a more powerful AM5 socket CPU and a mini ITX board. Now, I will admit that the AM5 mini ITX board prices are kind of ridiculous. So this could definitely be a good option for a lot of people out there. With the system we've built today, we've definitely got a much larger form factor than I really like, but I couldn't fit that 7800 XT in any other smaller case, so I went with this one here, 33 liters. If you want to see a small form factor build, like a 5-liter small form factor build with an RTX 4060 and this board, let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning a little more, maybe even picking up a Minisforum BD770i motherboard/CPU combo, I'll leave some links in the description. If there's anything else you want to see running on this system, let me know down below. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.